Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Galactic Reviews, where we have just watched the new animated Lord of the Rings movie, The Lord of the Rings: The War of Rohirrim. I've just noticed and looked it up so I can tell both of you, this is apparently the first movie for Lord of the Rings coming out. The next one is in 2026, which
Another
is a
one?
live action, and it's supposed to be Lord of the Rings: The Hunt for Gollum, which is supposed to come out
Oh,
as
I
of right
did see
now in
something about that. I
yeah,
thought it
as
was
of
a
right now in
game.
2026. This was apparently it's like kind of test run, I would guess, to see how well received things are going to be potentially with everything. But besides that, getting kind of sidetracked off right off bat, but I thought it was kind of important to bring it in since they announced both of these movies kind of at the same time. With this movie, The War of Rohirrim, first impression, I thought the plot was a little forced in the very beginning of the movie. It didn't feel like a Lord of the Rings movie, except for the fact of it had names of old characters that were mentioned and landmarks from previous Lord of the Rings movies and books. Besides that, it didn't really feel like Lord of the Rings. The plot, to me, the first 10 minutes was the driving force of the entire plot of the movie, but it felt like it was kind of forced. It didn't really flow. There was no I can't think of the word. To spoil it in a simple term, the king was challenged to a duel, or he challenged someone else to a duel, accidentally killed the person he was dueling, and the son decided to declare war. And that's the whole plot of this movie, pretty much. However, I didn't quite understand it solely for the fact of the other guy declared a challenge on the king, and the king took the guy out in one punch, and the son was angry. So it just it just seemed a little bit lackluster, in my opinion, for the very beginning. Even throughout the rest of the movie, they try to make you like this character, the villain, but I never really did. I didn't really see. I saw him more of throwing a temper tantrum throughout this whole movie. It was really disappointing, the whole villain arc of him and everything. All in all, it was kind of disappointing, in my opinion, for a villain and an overall plot for a Lord of the Rings movie. Without getting into any more details, I'll let you guys talk first. I would give this movie probably a 4.5 out of 10. I just didn't really enjoy it. It was kind of a disappointment for me for a Lord of the Rings movie. So I'll let one of you two go next.
Andrew, me or you? Me?
You got it. Yep.
All right. Well, I had fun watching the movie, but that's purely because me and Zach were cutting up the whole time we were watching the movie because it was an empty theater. That being said, this movie was not that good. I agree with Zach's points on the villain. The villain was more so his motivations weren't that well shown and that well put into perspective and put in depth. It went from straight from him like trying to be somewhat cordial to I'm gonna kill everybody in this town within like a split second. And I get like if he had like a good relationship with his father, but it seemed like he only respected him because he was his dad, and that was it at the very beginning of the movie. Like there's a lot of dynamics that they just did not explain into making this a good plot, and it kind of fell through on that aspect. I did not care that much for the main character. They also tried to reference a whole bunch of stuff, the like to Lord of the Rings and in a couple certain things. Like some of it just doesn't make any sense. When the cousin or the nephew gets thrown out of the castle for doing his job, and then he gets brought back at the very end with the whole horde of people that apparently sided with him for some reason. Like that's obviously to reference the I believe the second movie, Two Towers of Lord of the Rings, when the Eomer comes back. I believe that's his name. when he comes back into Helm's Deep for the Battle of Helm's Deep at the end. You also have stupid mistakes like the guy has a second weapon and decides not to use it in like a duel sort of aspect scenario where everything is kind of on the line, at least where the audience is supposed to think that everything's on the line, and he kind of feels like he half-heartedly just didn't care. Yeah, there's some more, but I'll kind of reserve a little bit because I feel like Zach has kind of got some more points that I'm probably going to agree with. I'll give this a 4 out of 10. It was bad, but not like atrociously bad. I wouldn't say it wasn't good by any means. Another thing that threw me off was the animation style, like the background animation and the foreground animation with the characters were two different styles. And I know me and Zach talked about this at the theater. It's that sort of like the Hanna-Barbera, I know, did this where like the background and the foreground are two different things, and like the background's like a complete painting and the foreground's like characters that are completely animated. But the animations or like the art styles were so different that it was jarring for a lot of it, or for some of the scenes anyway, where like it was very clearly different. And then on some scenes, they did a good job blending the two for like the background, but on a lot of them, they did not. And it was obvious for what like characters would interact with well before the scene was ever came to that scene, with like the thing that they were going to interact with being a different animation style than the background animation. That messed with me, and that took me out of the movie. But that's more so a me thing than an overall thing.
Cool. Well, I was able to watch War of the Mid last night. Not
War of
great.
the
Um,
War of the Mid
War of the Mid here. I don't know.
Rohirrim.
Um,
Sorry, that one took me a while to like mentally put together. I feel bad
Mid of
now.
the Rohirrim. I don't know. Not It's not great. Like the story never really catches me. They never really get you invested in the female character. She's really two-dimensional. Just not enough there to relate to or like feel for her. It had the basis for a potential of a good story. It's just the characters really took away from it. I think the best part was when one of the characters had a final stand. That was the best part of the movie.
Yeah,
Um,
Helm Hammerhand, I think was the
yeah,
king that
that
you're
was
talking
Yeah,
about.
cool.
yeah.
That was cool, and probably also the best or second best animated scene in the whole film. That brings me to my second point. It was just bad animation. Like
There was a lot of choppy parts.
the drawing, the quality, the crispness of it was high. It was very crisp, good quality stills and cells, I guess they would call them, but I don't think they use those anymore. Like if you took a screenshot from any point in this movie, almost 9 times out of 10, it's gonna be like, wow, that looks incredible. But they would just move so choppy and it wasn't fluid, and I don't know what frame rate they were using, but like they were so jagged, their movements. That took me out. Nothing takes me out worse than like bad animation. Either whether they were rushed and couldn't get as many frames in or whatever. Don't know. Didn't look good. Certain styles of animation fit choppy, but anime doesn't. More fluid the better. Yeah, just not much substance, too much fluff. This movie could have been like a good 45 minutes shorter and I would have still gotten the same out of it. Yeah, that's it's maybe put it on the background while you're doing chores or something. I don't know, if you really are a Lord of the Rings head and want to see everything. I was doing a little bit of Googling, and it's loosely based. There isn't like any story in like the Silmarillion or anything like fully fleshed out that this movie's based off of. Is apparently based off of like a couple pages in the appendices of one of the Lord of the Rings books, about Helm's Deep. Um, Enough for them to be like, yeah, let's make a movie about this, but then kind of had to come up with the story on their own and like the
Yeah.
characters and all that stuff. It wasn't written for them. Don't know if that helped or hurt them.
Well, you might be able to help me with this, Andrew, because I did look this, and I don't mean to interrupt your review, but
4 out of 10.
I went looking into the Helm's Deep thing because I was also curious too, and then I found a quote in the I think it was in the second movie where King Theoden actually calls it the Hornburg, and the valley is Helm's Deep. So I don't know what did you find out at
Oh,
all
I found
about
a
that?
Reddit post of a guy saying it's a film based on the life and conflict of Helm's Hammerhand. They will basically be adapting a story from the appendices of Lord of the Rings, maybe a few pages worth of content. Not a lot, but there's probably enough to elaborate on the film.
Hmm.
That's all.
Okay, because from what I saw, it was like completely contradictory to what like they had established in the movie. Like it was called the Hornburg, but now it was going to be called Helm's Deep, even though that valley is called Helm's Deep. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
So,
Which
I
uh,
am not a Tolkien historian.
well, neither am
I
I.
just found some random Reddit post.
which I want your opinion, Andrew, because I know I talked to Payson about this. Do you think that some or all of this movie was written by AI?
I honestly didn't even give it a thought.
Because I know
To
when
me, it
me and
feels like it at quite a few parts where it's
if not done
even if
by
it's
okay, go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead,
if
Zach.
not done by AI, then I don't know whose idea was to
At the
write
very
it like
least, it was
this.
very at the very least it was very predictable because me and Zach were
Yes,
calling
it
out
was
almost
predictable and
everything in the plot.
it was choppy with its plot at times.
Yeah.
It kind of cut short, did like 180s on personalities to characters. It just felt like if someone act like a person actually wrote this, they should be disappointed with the plot they wrote. If this was AI, then that makes a little bit more sense. But even still, I mean, it's still bad.
So this is the perfect test for any movie. If your favorite character is the character that only shows up for 5 minutes of the film, then you kind of got a problem with your movie to a certain degree. Like if that's somewhat telling. Not all the time, but that's somewhat telling.
Yeah,
Because I know like Zach, your favorite character was that old lady that made no reason whatsoever.
yeah. It was her and the younger brother who had the loot pretty much in all of his shots. And as I
Yeah,
said to Payson, I said they probably didn't draw enough pictures for him, so they just had one picture with the loot and said that's enough.
yeah. Well, they did that, and then by the time we said that, then they let the guy have the no longer have the loot. So
They drove they only drew 3 pictures for him. I still stand by it.
yeah, no, you're probably right to some degree. There's a couple plot holes. Like one big one that we discussed was like they never tried to shoot the guards never tried to shoot the whenever the bad guy and Race Bannon from Johnny Quest came over and rode down to the helm to I guess the Hornburg Castle and were going had the second brother, the youngest
Yeah,
brother, and we're about to slit his throat. Like none of the archers were going to shoot down at him, and we were given a perspective of how far the archers could shoot. I think a couple scenes later, where they were
yeah,
building the tower, and they were a lot further out than they were in, and they just barely missed the tower. So I think that's one where like I even gave them like the well, maybe they can't shoot that far, and then you see them shoot about as far as the tower. It's like, well, frick me. Like we tried, like I think a couple times we actually tried giving them like plot and like understanding as to why, and then they not long after they immediately upended whatever they did. Because
yeah,
I think I said at one point like the king is a wraith, jokingly, and then you said you said Zach like, oh, technically he couldn't be because this is after like
yeah.
Sauron is
This
already
is
kind of
after
defeated and they're
Sauron.
looking for the
Yes.
ring and I'm like, yeah, that's true. They can't do that then. And then all of a sudden, like Helm Hammerhand is kind of acting like a wraith. And they never give a full explanation of it. So you're assuming that he's a wraith the whole time, even though it makes no sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I don't think it was written by AI. What I was thinking was that it feels more like a Nepo baby script.
Okay. Yeah. No, I that could work too.
And I looked it up, and the two people who are credited as like the main screenwriters don't have much more under their belt.
Chat GPT.
Um, yeah, they don't. They might have like one other movie on under their belt.
Which is
Um,
odd why they would let someone with
however,
no background to do a Lord of the Rings
I
movie.
I don't know. The producer of it, the executive producer, was one of the co-writer screenwriters of the original Lord of the Rings
Yes.
movies.
Yes. And that was the biggest reason why I was somewhat excited to see this film. And apparently he's also doing the next one, the live action The Hunt for Gollum as well.
She actually,
I'm sorry. That's where I'm like, with how poorly this movie went, I'm nervous and
Well,
probably not
now
going to see the next movie.
and on top of that, I'm now curious as to how much she actually partook in the Lord of the Rings as a producer, or if she was just there to go get Peter Jackson coffee. Like, I'm not trying to, like,
well, in
sometimes
the
these are
original,
just,
she was a screenwriter, and then this one she just produced.
Yeah.
She
okay.
didn't write it.
I wonder how much she actually did help in the screenwriting for the original Lord of the Rings. Because, I mean, this one was atrocious.
Yeah.
Like,
So
it's a
it's
bad movie,
honestly,
and
it's
then you,
really disappointing to
it's a
have
bad
her name
movie.
attached to it.
Like, it's a bad movie by itself. You then attach Lord of the Rings to it and put it in that same world with cinematic masterpieces. Like, granted, they're like 4 hours long, but they are cinematic masterpieces. And you're putting them in that same world realm of like this is in that same world. It doesn't feel like it at all.
I think this would have been better to do as a live action Amazon Prime series than The Rings of Power.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like
Even,
if you
well,
they
they could
took
have done
this
this,
story,
they could have kept this animated and done it as an animated, like
yeah,
Yeah.
live action animated, it doesn't matter. It should have been, yeah, an Amazon Prime
like
TV show.
this kind of story would have done well with like the max kind of genre of
Hmm.
fantasy adaptation that they've been doing. Make it
Yeah.
more serious, make it more drawn out, make it character focused.
Yeah, but I don't know if
Yeah.
like they actually would have taken that opportunity and improved, or whether they just done something similar and just made it longer. Like, that's the thing.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
I'm just saying it would have at least been just more enjoyable in that format with the kind of story. This felt like really just watered down and half baked. They wanted to be
hmm
they kind of, it felt like they half wanted it to be like an action anime, but like also like an epic fantasy story. And it was like halfway between both.
yeah.
It didn't
It
commit.
no. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed.
I don't know if that would have. Yeah. Well, guess I'm
And
just.
they could have had more time to flesh out characters that way, I suppose, as well. Kind of flesh out the plot a little bit.
They could
Um,
have, but I also don't
Draw
know how
more
long.
frames.
I also don't know how
well,
long
yeah,
this movie. I also don't know how long this movie took from like inception
That's
to.
true.
So I
yeah,
can't
that's
gauge
true.
that.
Well, I
So,
think they announced it back in 2023, that they were going to do two more Lord of the Rings movies.
well, usually that means they're already in production by that point.
Well, you would think,
I would
but
think
this
so.
movie looks like it was in production for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's not that's a rush job.
What
Yeah,
happened? What'd you find?
I'm saying that's a rush job. If it's
if it was done in six
from
months.
announcement to when it came out, that's a rush job.
Yeah, that's about
Yeah.
maybe 2 years at
Okay,
best.
it was announced February 2023
It came out
that they were going to do two more movies,
and it came out November, December of 2024.
December of 2024.
So
Year
that's
and a
about
half.
a year and 8 months, roughly, maybe 10,
Yes.
8 to 10 months.
Yes. But I don't know if that's supposed to be this movie.
Either way, wasn't great.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of
We all
things that
agreed
just
before.
and a lot of things that
Yes.
just and a lot of things that just weren't answered, and that kind of didn't help with this movie.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
I
only thing that made this Lord of the Rings was the name and place itself,
Yeah. What
and
I
then
would have
just
Yeah.
throwing in Saruman and Gandalf at the end.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
it.
Gandalf in name only, with Saruman, like, you got a full appearance.
He
And
got
I
a full
don't
appearance. Yeah.
and it's never explained how she knows Gandalf.
He's a wizard that's been alive for a very,
I
very long
get that,
time.
but he
And as
travels
she said,
everywhere.
he goes by many different names. So you
I
can hear
know, but
legends of the wizards.
I get that, but I also don't know how she would know where to go
I
I
or
mean, it
thought
was
she had a
probably the
letter.
letter. And
okay.
she was also, communicating with the giant eagles, which
Oh, the
is one of
eagle. Yeah.
yeah, which is one of Gandalf's one trick.
Yeah.
What trick? I apologize,
I
Gandalf
forgot
fans.
I forgot they gave her like the power to speak to eagles for some reason.
Well, she doesn't speak to them. They understand. They speak to wizards.
They
It was
understand
explained
human
in the movie.
language.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
They
I
understand it. They just
yeah,
don't. You can't understand them. Only wizards can.
yeah, yeah. But like I don't know. It's not explained how she came into like know about wanting to feed the
Legends.
giant eagles and all that. Yeah, but like it's never explained how like she went up to this top peak and like got I don't there's a lot of like, wow, that happened. What a convenient what a convenience
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
kind
she
of.
met an
The
Kind.
whole
eagle.
Yeah,
film.
yeah. I understand.
Wow,
I
how
understand what you're
convenient.
going for. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right.
And on
You're right.
top of that, you got knockoff Samwise Gamgee just standing there that apparently was a royal guard the whole time that didn't do anything guardly at all.
Yeah,
And then you have
100%.
this and then you have
The
this
whole
old
time I was just
60-year-old
calling him
lady.
Samwise.
Then you have this 60-year-old lady that's apparently able to take on a whole army by herself with a shield and a sword. Now I get shield and sword, probably good, but taking on a whole 30 different guys coming down a tunnel that have all been armed and trained by these by Race Bannon in the movie, I'm assuming. And I'm sorry, I saw that guy as Race Bannon. I cannot unsee it. Andrew has no idea what I'm talking about.
And
Nope.
another thing is like throughout, especially towards the halfway point in the ending, the plot was so easy to read and understand that it was no longer fun to watch. There were a
I mean, I
lot of
was having
times where
fun
we
making
were,
fun of it, but that's about
well,
it.
yes, but there were a lot of times where we would make jokes saying like pretending like this is going to be the next line, and it actually was the next line of the movie.
You
It
called
was
it at least like
utterly
five
disappointing.
times. At least five
Yes,
times, dude. You called it
yes.
at least five times.
It was really disappointing how transparent this plot was. It
Yeah.
left nothing for the imagination, which is what a fantasy movie should do. And it fell short, just like that arrow.
I want to say some things can be predictable, yet fun to the imagination. This one had neither. It was both predictable
It,
and
to me, it felt
just
like
boring as
Andrew.
heck.
You can kind of understand this. When we went and watched Violent Night, it had the same feel as that. Just Violent Night was actually a better plot.
There's a difference between pattern recognition and knowing what's going to happen
Well, that's
and
true.
wanting something to happen.
The soundtrack was just a copy and paste of the other songs from the other movies.
Yeah, and I liked it. That was the best part about it. But
Yes, but it's like, please, I give us something. You can do something new for a Lord of the Rings movie. It shouldn't be that difficult. You already have the understanding of what their songs are. You
yeah.
can build on top of that. But I think that's about as much as we can tear into this movie and rip it apart as we can. So with that, what's going to be the next movie?
It should be no surprise. Sonic 3.
I've already seen
And
it. It's great.
You already
I'm
have?
excited. It looks like
Yes.
they did shadow the correct way, and I'm so excited to see that.
Yeah.
So good. I enjoyed it. If you like Dragon Ball Z, you're gonna like this movie. You like this movie, you're gonna like Dragon Ball Z.
Makes me concerned because I'm not a big fan of Dragon Ball Z.
You just broke Andrew. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Galactic Reviews. Join us next week. We'll be watching Sonic 3, and we'll see you next time on Galactic Reviews.